Hey, we're live. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another show of the Cash Flow on the Fly podcast. We have Johnny Nelson with us today, and I'm very excited. I was actually on his podcast last week, and it was an awesome podcast, awesome show. We had a pretty good conversation, so I'm pretty excited to have him on the spotlight today and dig into his brain and what he knows and what he's doing in the real estate space. Johnny, welcome to the show.
Sash, hey man, good to be here. Thanks for inviting me on after we had such a great convo on the other day. And yeah, looking forward to sharing some knowledge that the audience can use.
I love it, man. And why don't you start telling us a little bit about your background? What were you doing before real estate? How did you get into it?
For sure. So going back a number of years here, family had a contracting business in Alaska. We basically did custom homes predominantly, some spec homes and a little light commercial. After a bit of that, so I kind of gave that background into building space, and then I became a mechanical engineer. Went back to school, and I was doing that the past 9 years or so. And toward the tail end of that career, essentially, my wife and I started real estate investing, and that kind of just one thing just kind of led to another. And then the final venture, if you would, I left that corporate career, if you would. I know you had, a lot of your audience resonates with that of leaving or maybe even bolstering their corporate or that W-2 life, and stepped into funds and emerging funds and emerging fund manager, if you would, in the real estate space. So yeah, it's been really exciting, and there's lots of meeting cool people like yourself and others that have you're just not in that space when you're in the corporate world, and it's another realm of very exciting opportunities and entrepreneurs and thinkers.
Dude, so let me recap this. So you grew up in Alaska, and your family was they grew up doing spec homes. And for the audience that doesn't know, it's like building brand new construction, basically.
Yeah, I mean, kind of tail end of growing up there. Yeah, late teenage years, kind of finished up the growing up phase there in Alaska, and it was a mixture of spec and custom homes. So yeah, but yeah, still home building for sure.
Got it.
Single
Do they
family.
still do that?
Yes, they do. Yep.
Okay,
Still going
cool. So
on.
you already had some real estate background in you. And what made you get into mechanical engineering?
Kind of the challenge, man. I think that's actually a theme in my life, and the audience could use this for maybe inspiration. Don't be afraid. A lot of us maybe fall into some trajectory, whether it's a career or what mom and dad did or something that's shown, and that's like, I'm just going to spend my life there. And maybe it's truly your passion, and you have a real skill set there. However, don't be afraid to be bold and really do a career pivot. And it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to be uncertain, but also, it could be kind of your calling where you feel like you should go next in your life. So don't be afraid to take those bold moves in your life and try something different and unique on.
I love it, man. So the mechanical engineer was the bold move. Nobody in your family had ever been down that path. You were the first one to step into
That's
that.
totally correct, man. I mean, I was very, very actually uncertain. I didn't even know if I was smart enough to actually hack it. Like that was actually part of the allure, if you would, was like, does this brain that I had that I was given, is it smart enough to become an engineer in this space that I want to go into? So yeah, it was a real uphill climb.
What were you actually doing? So like as far as mechanical engineering, what were you working on?
Oh, for sure, man. I had quite a variety. I think that kind of speaks to the element of me that doesn't necessarily settle down, didn't want to get pigeonholed. Once after you leave college, it's this traditional thing where sometimes people just like stay in design, or they stay in process development, or they stay in manufacturing. I moved around a bit. So I was in manufacturing, I did process development, I did a little bit of design. The last company I was at was a startup for an additive manufacturing. Basically, they built the machines that made additive components. So that was really exciting startup company. So I kind of covered a lot of stuff, and that was very deliberate. As every couple of years, I had this thought like, hey, I want to do something else. I want to try my hand at another aspect of this engineering space. And mechanical is probably a little bit aside, but mechanical engineering is probably the broadest discipline, and you can do a lot of different things using the fundamentals of that profession.
That's awesome, man. I like how you were kept on challenging yourself and switching the space. What made you go from that to real estate?
After I got my master's, also in engineering, and it was kind of a material focus. I was like, well, what's next? I had this, I wasn't like, it didn't have like the same thought on the same day, but it was kind of this like, well, I've kind of like achieved what I was hoping to get. I became an engineer, I got my master's, blah, 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 kind of this, I was working in a medical device company at that time. And my wife had recently got her master's, and it was like, I guess we just, have kids and gotta go until we're 60 or whatever and retire. And then a colleague in the cubicle next to me is like, "Hey, I'm house hacking." I'm like, "Whoa, what's that?" And kind of, I think it probably called some memories from back when I was building. When I was a builder, a contractor, I didn't really think, this is strange, Satch, that I didn't really think of myself as as an investor, as a real estate investor. It's like, I build houses. I'm a carpenter. I'm a builder. I'm a general contractor, not as an investor. So this was a new mindset for me. Like, oh, what is that? And then once it kind of rekindled that past knowledge, and I dove into Bigger Pockets and these other podcasts that a lot of us start in. I read Robert Kiyosaki's Read a Purple Book, and that just kind of like was the match, the spark that kind of set the flame that could be something I could do in conjunction with my W-2 work.
And can you explain the house hacking for somebody that may not know?
Absolutely. We throw it around like everyone knows what it is. House hacking would be simply you get a duplex or even a single family and you rent out part of it. So maybe we're going to keep the numbers super simple here. Maybe my mortgage payment is $1,000. If I could rent out either half of it or a bedroom for, I don't know, $500, what happened to my mortgage payment or my payment that I have to make every month? I just halved it, or I completely, covered it. So you could say that you're, in some instances, some people live for free or live for a greatly reduced rent. So it's really a smart way of building equity, keeping your own expenses down, and getting into something that maybe you couldn't afford, or that you would have just followed this traditional path and paid that really, really slow mortgage payment down that's amortized over 30 years, which the front half of that is heavily loaded with interest. And a lot of times after 5 or 6 years, you move anyway. So the bank's counting on that. So all that, we don't want to go too far down in that side hole of how mortgages are set up, which is fine, but you just got to be aware of how they're set up. So when you house hack, you can really, hack this. It's called house hacking because it's called hacking. Your house hacking or hacking the system. That's how I think of it.
Love it. So then you started down the real estate path. What was the first thing you started doing after? So like this guy said, "Hey, house hacking," and then you started doing all this research, reading books, looking back into the real estate space. What was the first thing you got into when you got into real estate?
I told my wife we should buy a duplex. And one thing, just a quick side note: if you have your spouse, make sure they come along on the learning journey with you, so you don't get too far ahead of them, even if it's like a couple months, because they're going to be like, if they grew up in the space of go to college, get a good job, and like I said, if my wife had gotten her master's, I'd got my master's, and like that's basically it's an implicit commitment to like keeping along that path. Like I'm so serious about this topic, or I love it so much, I'm going to continue on that. So again, pivoting back, make sure your spouse is going along you with the educational journey, whether it's real estate investing or wherever it is. Make sure they're coming along with you. So I was ahead of my wife. The point of it is I was ahead of my wife on that. So she was a little bit of a hard sell initially, and I was like, we should buy duplex. And while she was digesting that out of the blue comment for me, we started, one thing she could get behind was adding a bedroom and a half bath to our current house, a very small house, but also it was just a basement. And we basically added one more bedroom to that. So that was kind of our first serious, commitment to investing and also renting that house out. Like, well, this house could rent for, X amount of dollars. We had a bedroom and a half bath. It could, rent for this much more. And with my background, I'm like, I can do it. And I did. I did all the work. I don't really recommend that, for a long term, but yeah, we that's kind of our first flagpole in the ground, if you would, about we're real estate investors.
Got it. Love it. So it was, just want to make sure I understood that. So the first move was essentially like renting out a place in your house. You
Yeah, that was
expanded.
it. That was the intent. Like, we're gonna work on our own house, and we're living here, and with the idea, we're gonna rent it out.
And did you guys actually end up doing it or not?
Yep, we did. Yeah. So as she was digesting these two parallel paths are going on, while she was digesting this idea of buying a duplex, we were working on our current house, because whether it was we stayed there or someone else rented it, it still was a plus. So we actually found a duplex to buy, and then we're gonna we had seller financing on it, so we had to move there. And then that opened up, just very strategically, very systematically, that opened up the house that we were living in to rent out, and then we moved into the duplex.
Got it. Got it. So then how when did you make the transition into the fund manager world?
For sure. So we'll quickly fast forward over quite a bit of stuff, but I'll give just a little bit of
Yeah,
context there.
actually, no, yeah, yeah. Give me the steps. I don't want us to
Sure.
cut to the front because I want to understand
Yeah.
the.
Um, this idea, I'm sure you've seen it, Satch, of people are gonna house hack their way to wealth, and it's a really good start. And there's lots of things to learn. If you're a first time property manager, dealing with tenants, placing tenants, all these like really basic steps that people that are in the space of managing properties and leasing properties, it's second nature to them, but it's not necessarily easy, or you don't know the skill set. So there's lots of really basic fundamentals to learn there. So that's where we were. That's what we, kind of committed to learning ourselves. So we had a single family, we had a duplex. So again, not getting too detailed over this stuff, but we saw the value of scaling, wanted to go faster, wanted to scale faster. And then of course we saw some friends doing larger stuff. Like, well, I think this maybe is a better way, if you actually are serious, because you can keep on the path of house hacking. You just get, maybe every year or two, you buy a home and you live in it and fix it up, and then you rent it out, and then you buy another home. That's an absolute solid path to do. However, if you're really committed to the space and you want to get somewhere using real estate, you're going to probably realize fairly quickly that, this is really something you want to do. You want to go larger. So we went as LPs, which is a limited partnership, into a deal. So we would understand that space. Like this is looking like it's going to be a real deal. Like we're going to commit to this hard, maybe even leave our W-2 jobs. So we invested as LPs into a deal in Oklahoma.
This is
And
indication.
yeah, syndication,
Yeah.
standard syndication. We knew through our multifamily group that we joined. We knew these guys. We liked them. We liked the deal. Liked all the things that we were learning and being taught. It all made sense. And they were one of the coaches. They didn't pitch us. But we just knew about it. And
Can
like, hey,
you
this makes
can you break down the deal? I don't know if you were going to talk about it, but can you break it down just to
for
say?
sure. Yeah, I don't remember. It was like 2020, so I don't remember all the numbers. It was a minimum 50,000 commitment, and we. I don't want to go into too many side paths here, but we actually used some of the CARES Act. Uh, Basically the CARES Act, you could actually pull out some 401k money without
Mhm.
penalty, and then spread the tax over 3 years. So we went and took advantage of that at that time. And so that's where we got the kind of that 50K slug of money to invest in this. And we committed and like, hey, we're going to learn this just in case, which we think it's going to be serious. We're going to be leading deals, but we want to know what the experience of that is. But the deal itself was like a 70. I don't remember the exact numbers, but around a 70 unit deal. They were going to do solar on the top of it. It was master meter. It was going to cut the NOI down by using expenses, add laundry and laundry to every unit. So interesting, certainly interesting. A strong market, one just the Midwest, not a real like sexy market like I don't know Austin or Tampa or something like that. Just a Midwest market, good economy, fundamentals are there. And then obviously we could spend an entire podcast on how do you review a deal or how do you review an area or underwrite an area and make sure it's good and deals are good. But setting all those things aside, it all the things seem to check the boxes of a solid investment. So we went for it.
Love it, man. So you went into this indication in 2020. It's a 70 unit. It's in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Um, you guys were LPs. Is that deal still going? You guys sold it
Yep.
already?
Still going. Still. Yep. Still. We're still getting distributions from that. There
Okay.
was a slump. I think that they were hit with a little COVID impact, as a lot of multifamily deals were. So, but we've seen quarterly distributions from that. Most quarters, there was a few that got missed, but a lot of investors saw that as well. And I think we both realize that that's the game of real estate, where you have to have you grow into it. You don't just like cut your job off and like I'm going to live on real estate. You kind of like step into it, as slowly or as fast as you think makes sense for you. But we were trying to be fairly aggressive. So like, yeah, let's see where this goes. Let's invest this money. And that's not the only income, obviously, with us still working from the distributions of that passive investment.
What's the prep on that one? The prep for return?
I think it was a seven or eight, I believe.
7, right? Cool.
Yeah.
So for the audience, some of the people that may be interested in being a limited partner, even though you have a 7 to 8% preferred return, you mentioned some quarters you did not get paid.
That's
Right?
a good learning point there, Satch. Yes, if you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, yeah. If you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, sure, I can. So, in investments, these private equity real estate investments. Nothing. We never use the word guaranteed. If any sponsor or syndicator is throwing the words like guarantee or promise, they are new in the space, and they should not be using that kind of language because nothing is guaranteed. You reduce the risk by education and knowing and trusting and liking the people that do it, and verifying that with other people that have invested with him that they are what they say they are and are good partners to be with, to go alongside with as passive investors. So because of that promise that's not made, there's a promise that never should be made, you will not always get a return. Yes, there's a what they call a preferred. So it sets it up where it's the interests are aligned. Where if there is a shortfall of money, let's just say there was more expenses came up that weren't expected, any money that does come in, the passive investors will get that money first before the lead group or the general partners get paid up to an 8% cash on cash return for the year. I know there's a little bit wandery, a little bit, and if you want to restate that more concisely, Satch, go ahead. But that's more or less what happens. Make sure it's you get paid before the general partners get paid up to 8% return annually.
Yep. Yeah, you're exactly right. You hit it right on you hit the nail on the head. Before the general partners get paid, which is what I love about syndications, that they're very a good syndication is the payment towards the general partners is heavily weighted towards the performance of the asset.
Yeah,
Meaning,
you want that team to be motivated to do well throughout the life of the project. So they're going to want you want them to be looking out for your interest continually throughout the deal, so it performs right to the end.
yeah, absolutely. And cool. So I love that. So then that was your first experience. You're dipping your toes into the syndication, right? You do these deals in LP, which is something I don't know what you think, but I recommend that for everyone that wants to get into whether you want to become active in real estate in syndications. First, invest as an LP and just see what it's like. I did the same thing.
I totally recommend that, Satch. I really do. It's very you learn a lot, and obviously the more deals you're in, the more you learn. There's always there's no amount of learning that's enough. Like, oh, I learned enough. It's your call, of course, to make that determination. But for heaven's sakes, at least do one, so you know what the heck you're talking about. And maybe that's right for you. Maybe you like your W-2 job or your business. There's lots of professionals or successful founders and professionals, law partners, things like that, that do very well in their space, and they just want to continue investing as a limited investor. And that could be your first foray into it, and you love it, and you just stay with it. If you have other aspirations of being more active or having a career in real estate, still go at least one or two LPs, come in as an LP, so you learn what the process is like, and mainly things to avoid. Like, there were some communication issues. That's something that is burned in my soul. I love communication, and there was a couple times where that was a little bit short. So that's something that you can walk away with maybe as next time as an operator, when you grow up and become the big boy and you're going to lead a deal, you want to make sure you don't do anything that you didn't like. So, kind of the golden rule there.
Yeah, I love it. And yeah, I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but there was somebody commented on LinkedIn the other day that you should never discard someone it is their first deal in a syndication. And because I guess this guy had a good turnout on that syndication that they invested with this person. This was their first deal ever. And I said, I don't know. It just depends. It depends on the context, It depends on everybody has to start from somewhere, and I agree with that. But there's a lot of courses out there right now that they promise you that you can do your first multifamily deal with no experience. And dude, if you're somebody that just took a course and is going out of the blue, just start doing a deal, there's no way I'm putting my money with that person, because there's just so many things that they just don't know. And obviously somebody has to start from somewhere, but I at least want to see that you were a limited partner, then you were active, performing some other duties on an active syndication, and then you learn. You've been involved in many deals. Maybe you were not the lead sponsor, but you were involved in the active deal doing things. And then you eventually did your own deal, right? And then I'll be like, okay, I can see all your track record. You were involved in all of these deals that already went full cycle. So I know you've seen a lot of things. So I know you understand, right? So I feel comfortable investing with you. This is the first deal that you're lead sponsoring, but I know you've been in the game for a while. So I don't know why I went on that tangent, but just wanted to put it out
No,
there.
it's a good note of like kind of the context of the team, and maybe as beginning passive investors, maybe we're around some beginning lead sponsors. Maybe they haven't done 10 deals, and maybe it's their first or second deal. But I think you're another way of saying it was like, go ahead and give them a chance, but also, vet the team. A lot of these beginning sponsors are smart enough to know they need to bring in an experienced key principal or someone that's been in the space for a while. Maybe three of the team is newer, but then one of the team is his experience, and they're lending their intellectual capital to the team. So there's lots of things to look for there. But yeah, I think that's a point well made.
Cool. Love it, man. So then you did the syndication. What happens next?
For sure. We started looking for, yeah, kind of gave us some confidence how that goes, what to look for. And then we started looking in our home region here, our area that we live now in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We all know different markets are very, the markets are local. Obviously, you're not going to say that the market in Miami is equivalent to Minneapolis, Minnesota. They're really, really different. Obviously, they're still in the United States, but the markets are wildly different. Minneapolis is a kind of a steady eddy. There's certain markets in the Midwest that have more robust growth, but Minneapolis has been ranking, just for example, fairly anemic in the rent growth. So if you think you're going to make a play like, hey, I'm going to just snap up this apartment and rent growth is like 20%, I'm just going to flip this thing in 18 months. That's not going to happen here. It's a different strategy. So we were looking for pretty hard for something with cash flow, something for a decent price, and this, that, and the other. And we finally found something. We leveraged a direct to seller campaign. A lot of people were telling me at the time, like, "Hey, go ahead and do this. This works. Give it a shot." I was very skeptical, and but I did it anyway, just because people that are smarter than you, and where they are where you want to go. Listen to them, and whatever you want to think, you can think, but go ahead and just take the action. So we found a deal. It was pretty exciting. It was a new build. It wasn't even completed yet. And that we got that under contract and finally closed on that at the end of last year. So that was so like we had by that time we had a couple of duplexes, we had a fourplex, did a couple of single families, had a few flips done. So there's a variety of enough to give us experience and know kind of what we're doing in the space, and then finally closing that deal like I said, last winter, really. And that kind of we can take this is a good segue into what I'm doing now is focusing in raising capital, or saying another way of saying that is I'm launching a fund, real estate fund, and I got a couple things going there right now as well. We could elaborate on whatever you want to there.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Well, how many units was the new build that you guys closed on? Let's break
Yeah,
that.
so it was a fourplex, which was older, and then it was a 40 unit. So the 40 unit was new. Like I said, it was on first person ever was the people we placed in there. I was kind of exciting for a brand new unit, and then the fourplex was pretty old, but still there was tenants in that too. So yeah, it was a 40 at a four.
Got it. Love it. And so in this deal, the 40 unit, you guys raised money for it. And are you involved with, is it just you or are there more active?
Yeah, a bit of an interesting story there. And I'll keep it short, but enough meat on there for people to get the context. We started syndicating it, and we had if people are familiar with the space, we had a portal, we had a webinar, we had had the pitch deck, and all these different things. Took obviously that takes a lot of time to get all those things set up. And then, kind of like about a month into the raise, we just had soft commitments. We didn't have any hard. Didn't have any cash in the bank or hard commitments yet. We came across a partner in our group that was exiting out of I think it was a warehouse, if I remember correctly now, a warehouse. So he had some. This is another term that people may or may not be familiar with. 1031. It's IRS. Code section 1031, where you can defer the capital gains from an asset and then place it into another asset, and just you don't have to pay tax on it right now, you're just deferring it. But that could be a very powerful way to grow your real estate empire by deferring those taxes. So we found in short, we found a partner with 1031 money, and essentially we just turned off the syndication. Like, hey, like, we look at this versus if we have 40 people come into this, or we just bring it down to a JV and do 5 people, and that's the returns are much more lucrative with 5 people as just as a junior, as a just a small partnership, private partnership, and that's what we did. So that's in short, with was syndication. Midway, we turned it off and went just private partnership.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
And how is that deal performing right now?
pretty good. We are we had to pivot a little bit the last couple of months here, adding some. It's all studios, which is a challenge. Definitely would recommend to not, when if you're going to design a new build, don't go all of one um, size. Get a mix. Studio. Some studios, some one bed, some 2 beds. Have it mix. So all studios. I think that was actually it's kind of like one of those things where the builder was new as well. So, he didn't really know better. And I think that's why we got it for an attractive price, because of this is kind of his first time. And we brought some things to the table that he was kind of lacking. So, if you could say, oh, if it was designed perfectly, then, it would be so much better. But then also well, if it's designed perfectly by an experienced builder, it probably would have been another $1 million. So then we would have probably would not have purchased it. So, life is complex like that. You take things, as you find them, and take advantage of it. So that's what we did. So pivoting back to that, so we've done some furnished, and that's been somewhat pretty successful as well. So we have kind of a mix of about 3/4 of leasing up, just standard like annual leases, and then we did some furnished units, and that's been successful. It's near a hospital. So that's been pretty interesting too, to get those nurses and surgery techs and things like that in there. So that's been awesome.
Love it. What's the business plan overall?
Probably, I mean, like if we just had to throw something not real carefully thought out there, hold the thing for 10 years, then probably sell it. I mean, it's brand new. The capex, as you can imagine, there's no roofs to fix or windows to change or carpets to rip out. So capex demands are pretty low, and just basically keep it and let it appreciate, let it stabilize. And we have financing on it is through kind of a it was actually a contract for deed, and then the builder, actually gave it straight through financing, right through at the same terms he was paying through his construction loan. So I don't want to lose you in the audience and the details of that, but it was kind of complicated. But no, just keep it simple here. So eventually, after a little bit of stabilization, we want to go to agency debt. We all know, of course, that interest rates are up now, kind of high. So but we're sitting good enough where we can just ride this out until we see some stability, and Fannie and Freddie are open to talking with reasonable terms for long-term debt, and that's where we'll put it. At least that's the thought now.
Love it. What was the purchase price on that?
5.5.
5.5.
Yeah.
And how much you think is worth now?
It's probably like 6.2, something like that. Yeah.
Cool.
The market is, Minneapolis market can be strange. Yes, we had riots here, right kind of in mid-COVID, and with rent growth being, slower. But that just tells me that there's pent up market forces that are waiting to push up some of those numbers that seem to lag a bit from the rest of the country. So because you look at the fundamentals of the market, you think like you have like 5 professional sports teams, and not that I'm a huge sports guy, but just like you have to look at these things, like what attracts people here. It's definitely a regional magnet. You have medical device manufacturing, you have fintech, you have a lot of food processing, kind of these like large industries, like what's attracting people to the space. All those things are there. Not that there's not lots of stuff going down in Tennessee and Texas and Arizona, but as far as like what is this place? Is it dying or is it growing? It's growing, and there's lots of like fundamental job creation and other attractions. So all that being said, those are the fundamental things we look at in an area, and all those things are there. It's just a matter of time as you be patient, you let the rent growth catch up and demand catch up to the product that you're in, or the asset class you're in.
Love it. So when you guys refinance, and I just want to throw some numbers here for the audience on what the power of real estate. You guys purchased it for 5.5. How much money did you guys put down?
We put in 100,000.
No, I mean overall as a.
Oh, sorry, that was our share. So I think we negotiated down a pretty skinny. Like we were like he agreed to like 900K, and then we ended up with extra money essentially from the 1031. I think we put in like 1.2 or 1.3. Yeah,
it's near like 20%, right? So
yeah, it ended up being 20%. But I mean, like to your point, like he actually agreed for us to come in with much less than like almost like 3/4 of that. So it was like maybe like 15% down would have been allowed, but we had extra money to place, because that's how 1031s work. But we were pretty skinny, and he agreed to it. So I was actually kind of exciting, but we didn't need to do that, and that just increases your leverage, of course. But
Right.
also, he said yes, so that was like, holy smokes, man! You're doing contract for deed and letting us do like 15% down. This is crazy.
That's awesome. So you guys got about 4 million on the 4.2 on the note on this place, right? And
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
go refinance this property, I'm just thinking about if you refinance, will you be able to pull your money out and then roll it into something else?
That's the
Um,
idea. Yeah, it's again, because of the complexity. And again, we don't want to get too fancy with a lot of jargon here. The 1031 money came in as a tenant in common, which is a very particular structure. You have to roll in, that into a deal depending on how it's set up. We had a very high priced lawyer and a CPA. It was a combo lawyer and CPA that set it up for us. Uh, a little side note: if you talk to high-powered and high-priced CPAs and attorneys across the country, they don't always all say the same thing. So if the audience or you think you're gonna they're all gonna go and consult the same rule book somewhere, they're not. It's a little bit gray, it's a little bit fuzzy, it's interpretive. They're basing on guidance and IRS letters of guidance. So you're not going to get the same answer depending on where you go. So a lot of judgment calls and trust essentially in your team to set this up correctly, so it's properly and structured from a legal and compliance standpoint.
cool. Yep, I agree. I hate that gray thing, but I only like it when it benefits me. Uh,
I second that.
Good. So before we wrap up this podcast, I really want to touch on what you're doing now. So like we talked about that deal that you guys closed on last winter, and I want to talk about what's next for Johnny in his challenging adventures.
For sure, man. So this we touched on it a bit at the beginning, and that was having the confidence and the boldness, whatever the word you want to throw out there, to when you see an opportunity or a calling to take a step in the direction and just go for it. We saw how difficult and challenging it was to raise via the syndication route that the money for that 40 unit. And I knew the structure and the terms were good, but there were just different challenges of COVID and the fact that it was Minneapolis, that people had some reluctance to invest. Of course, with the partner that came in with a lot of the capital, some of those challenges just kind of like were set aside. But if we continued on the syndication space, it's a lot of work, very challenging indeed. So I saw basically an opportunity in our multifamily group. I'm part of several groups, and being in the space, you see how a lot of operators have challenges in capital raising. So I'm like, you know what, this is an interesting opportunity. What would happen if we focused in on just that part of it? We're not necessarily talking to brokers and trying to bring down deals ourselves, but we focus in that space of capital raising. And hence, the best way to do that, at least in my view, is using a fund or a fund of funds. And essentially, your team's focus is talking to passive investors, showing them the deal, picking the best deals, going through the entire thesis of why you should be investing in this spot with this sponsor with these returns, et cetera. So that's been the focus. That is the focus right now, is growing that venture of, allowing passive investors to come into our fund, our real estate fund. And we're going to start out with, apartments, or just multifamily apartments in growth markets of the US. And hopefully I want to scale to other assets, maybe self-storage, industrial, car washes, things like that. But, we'll start out with this very, very traditional and tried and true asset class of multifamily in the strong markets of the U.S.
I love it, man. What's the and I think we spoke about this before, but for someone that may be hearing this for the first time and said, okay, well, I could invest with Johnny in one of these deals in his fund, right? Will they get different terms if they invest with you? Like, are they losing money by investing with you instead of going direct to the lead sponsors?
That's such a fantastic question, Satch, because people, depending on their experience level, many of investors that know about the space have invested in syndication. So it's a question that comes up a lot. And typically the investment can be slightly better, or oftentimes we set it up where it's not guaranteed, but 99% of the time it's equivalent to investing directly into the deal. and sometimes it can actually be better because we get better terms as because we're bringing in a large amount, a large check. So to say that another way, many sponsors, passive investors, these sponsors, they'll write maybe a $50,000 or $100,000 check. Okay, this is minimum. People put the minimum in, and then they invested with the sponsor. And our team, we want to bring $1 million, 2 million, maybe 5 million to the deal, and because that lessens the load on the sponsor, they're like, hey, instead of an 8% 8 pref, we'll give you a 10 pref, and that's how we make money, and that's how we can provide optimum returns to our investors.
Joe, yeah, love it. So you still investors essentially, just to expand on that last terms you gave. Obviously, this is just an example, right? But if the syndicator is giving their sponsors that are putting $50,000 to $100,000 in an 8% preferred return, someone invests in your fund, you go and negotiate better terms for your fund to where you get as a whole 10% preferred return. So
That's
you still
correct.
give your investors within your fund at 8 or 9. I mean, obviously
Yep.
that's just an example, right? But you give them
Yep.
8-9% return, preferred return, and then you keep the rest, right? So
That is correct. And then one final thought to that, one benefit, and this is where it really comes home, Sach, is the amount of deals that we're still in the process of setting up here. We'll be go time in about 3 months here. We are looking at a ton of deals. So we are, versus maybe you have one sponsor and they have, maybe they do, 3 deals a year, versus us, like we're looking at like 100 deals from, 10 sponsors in that area, and we're picking the best because we can. People are coming to us like, hey, do you want to participate in this? And that's a really good spot to be. You want to be in the spot that people want to talk to. The people that are coming to us, they need us, they want us, they want to talk to us, and like, okay, we'll participate in that deal from sponsor A, and we'll participate in the third deal from sponsor B, and things like that. So you're really getting the best of the best from if you trust us on our team and how we analyze deals. That's something else you cannot get going to one sponsor.
So you just want to make sure I understood that. With your fund, because it can be both ways, right? Sometimes they call it like a blind fund where people, the fund manager will be investing the funds in different syndications. So like the one fund will invest in a couple of syndications, or you were saying that you are using the funds to invest in like one syndication, then you raise funds again for a different fund for another syndication.
I'll elaborate on that. So we're setting it up wherein with the deals that come into the fund are the cream of the crop. So yes, maybe there'll be 3 deals inside the fund, but what is it? What was the selection criteria to get those deals? Like, why did those deals come in? Was it just the first person at the door, or was the team very selective in which deals came in? So you're getting like, maybe it's all from one sponsor, perhaps. And my goal is to have top deals from 3 sponsors in there, or whatever. It could be 4 or 5 sponsors. Eventually, as you grow, things change. But you have, maybe in January, Team A has a great deal, and then maybe in June they have another deal, and I'd be like, oh, it's okay. But then I'm also talking to sponsor B, and then they have a great deal in June. So then you can see how that works. I got a great deal from Team A, and I got a great deal later on from Team B. So I'm selectively cherry picking the top deals from these sponsors because of their just luck or knowledge or resources or whatever. And then because of that, because I'm skimming the cream off these various sponsors, only the best of the best is going into the fund.
Yeah, I love that, man. And to take it one step farther, as far as the benefits go with that, is that you're only bringing into the fund, like you said, the cream of the crop on those 3 funds that came in were the best of the best that you have been able to find that are out there, right?
Yes.
And then as an extra safety net, you have the reassurance that out of those 3, if one performs sort of like halfway, the other 2 deals can be pretty strong, and they compensate for the entire thing to make sure that you're still getting strong returns, as opposed to you going in at one syndication alone. If that deal was the one that performs halfway, that's it, right? There's nothing to overcome or compensate for the mediocre returns.
It's a tremendous advantage, man. Yeah, it normalizes those returns. So like one deal is pulling it down. Investors have been in the space for a bit. Anyone that's been in the space for 10 years has been part of a mediocre to kind of lackluster deal. That's just how it goes. And it's very, very rare that somebody has just participated in home runs the entire career. So if you're participating in three different sponsors, at one time, or four, whatever it is, a number, you're averaging out those returns, and you're going to get a very consistent return profile in your to your own investment thesis. Yeah, so it makes it very, very compelling.
Love it, dude. One more question I want to ask before we wrap it up here. If there's someone new wanting to get started in investing in syndications, what would you recommend them to do? As far as like just wanting to learn about, and let me take one step back. They just want to learn about real estate. What would you recommend them to do?
Yeah, for sure, man. There's a number of I guess even we'll even go one step even back from that here. So somehow they learned that they wanted they heard somehow they heard or got the bug that they wanted to do real estate. And I would challenge them like, so what is your intent? What is your goal with wanting to do that? Is it just like a burning passion to be in real estate? Or a lot of folks in our space, Satch, professionals like engineers or lawyers or pilots, they're successful, but also they want to see something. They want to bolster their income. They want to see another path to retirement. They want to have an alternative source of income. So that is the question in my mind to ask and kind of flesh out first. Like, what are we doing this for? Because people, we've both seen it. We've seen people just flail their arms and thrash around doing different stuff, not focused, not really having that goal, zeroed in on. And then there's lots of excellent resources, and like some of those fundamental questions of like, why should I do this? And that's like Rich Dad Poor Dad, Garrett Gunderson's Killing Sacred Cows, like some of these fundamental like reshifting of the mind of the way we were taught and maybe grew up as these kind of like fundamental ways of looking at money and business and work. And then once you get that kind of established, is real estate a possible venture you want to be part of? And that's so I'm kind of stepping through it. So now if the answer is yes to that, because you don't necessarily need to be super lucky to do fairly well in real estate. That's why so many people are in it. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be super lucky. Most people that get into real estate do quite well, which is why it's so powerful. So if all those kind of answers kind of lead to this, then you can go down the house flipping route. You can go down the passive investing route. You can find out about syndication. So I know that wasn't a direct answer to your question because it's so broad and there's so many things to go down, but answer that, I guess, just for the audience right now, so I don't ramble here, answer that fundamental question. Why do you want to, what are you doing here? Flushing out other ways of making money, and what's the goal there?
Yep, I agree 100%. Dude, that's awesome, man. Johnny, how can people find out more about you if they want to get in touch with you? They want to find out more about this fund, invest with you.
Absolutely, man. So my fund is arctoscap.com. And that's basically I'm just rebranding right now, so it's super exciting to be on shows like here to spread the word. As we're launching in this new kind of rebranding of what we're doing here, and we're going to have some really, really awesome high quality products in that. So arctoscap.com. Very active on LinkedIn. I post all the time there. I hope to see you there on Facebook as well. And of course the website. And I have a podcast, which I just, as we kind of alluded to, it's investing stuff you should know. It's on Apple and all the other platform. So hope to have a listen, hope to have a like, and hope to see you on LinkedIn as other platforms.
Love it, man. We're gonna put all those links in the show notes so people can get easy access to all of them.
I love
And
it.
Johnny, dude, I appreciate all the value that you provided today. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
Wonderful, man. Thank you for having me.